The first duty of government is to protect our rights.
It's our job to maintain the proper role of government in what we were tasked to do.
In the Idaho Constitution, Article 1, Section 1, we have a right to life, we have a right to defend life.
This legislation is centered on meeting the needs of Idaho families.
And we have no way to maintain control over the spending of this program, and it will be a disaster for this state long term.
But we have a whole gamut of kids whose parents would like to do something for them and they cannot.
The courts have long held that our ability to transfer title on real property benefits society as a whole.
This is simply about putting it out of reach of young, innocent, vulnerable children and making our libraries and schools a safe place for them to go.
And I am increasingly frustrated that we cannot stop ourselves from drinking at the public trough.
He's sounding the alarm. He's saying if we don't address these issues, we potentially might have greater problems moving forward.
I feel like we're back to an unappointed board that gets to decide who is essential and who is non-essential.
If I was looking at a business and I was looking at these figures, there would be heads rolling because this is unsustainable.
We're supposed to be bottom-up government. We're supposed to be representing my citizens' ideas and your citizens' ideas, and we're supposed to be discussing them and debating them to come to a conclusion.
And for me, it's about a couple things. It's about food security, it's about national security, and it's about preserving American exceptionalism.
The First Amendment and our freedom of religion, freedom of speech are our first liberties. They are so important. We don't have the rest without them.
All right, welcome, Idaho Signal. We are on the air. It's January 30, 2024, and we have a live shot right now of the Senate floor. We have, we know that this morning the Senate has been engaged in going through gubernatorial appointments and such. So we're going to check in back with the Senate in a little bit. They are running through some bills today, and we'll keep track on that. Yesterday we were checking out the House. They had a lengthy debate on the fentanyl bill, which then delayed some of the other bills that were on the schedule for today. We thought that they were going to get through them today, but the House adjourned early. They were only in session for maybe 20-25 minutes, so it looks like they won't be back until tomorrow, and we'll see if they continue debate then. So in the meantime, we have a very special guest with us this morning because we still need to clear up some confusion, dispel some myths, and get things on the record. So with me this morning is the chairman of the Kootenai County Republican Central Committee, Brent Regan, also lovingly known as the KCRCC, popularly known as that. But Brent, welcome to the program. There are some myths out there going on about how Idaho is going to have a say in who becomes the Republican nominee for president. So I wanted to bring you on and continue informing the people about what exactly they can expect come March 2nd. So welcome to the program.
Well, thanks, Matt. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. And it's fun to be here. The Idaho presidential primary was canceled last legislative session. The Secretary of State, Phil McGrain, wanted to move the presidential primary from March till May and introduced a bill to do that. It went very quickly through the House, and right after it came out of the House, somebody looked at it carefully and said, wait a minute, this cancels the presidential primary entirely. We're not going to have a presidential primary at all. And despite that, it went through the Senate and the governor signed it. And the party, Chairwoman Moon, came out and said, we really need to fix this. We need to repeal the bill. They said, we'll just go ahead and put a follow-on legislation to move it to May. The problem is that the May primary is May 21st. And so it isn't canvassed until May 31st. Well, the RNC convention is mid-July. And in order to have your delegates accepted at the convention, you have to give them a list of delegates 45 days ahead of time, which is also May 31st, which means you would have to, in 0 days, you'd have to hold a convention and then validate and accept the various delegates that you're going to send to the RNC for the, it's at the Republican National Convention where they actually select the candidate who's going to represent the Republican Party in the presidential run. So if you're late, if you miss that 45-day deadline, you can lose half or all of your delegates. Not only that, but a May primary is after. You'd be in the last 5 states to do that, and your voice really wouldn't matter anymore. Nobody would care what Idaho thought. In fact, when I mentioned that months ago to Senator Risch, I said, yeah, they're thinking about moving there's a bill to move the primary from March till May. He looks at me and says, why bother having one at all then? So, yeah. So,
wow, okay.
Yeah. And so that's what we're doing. The party got together. Chairman Moon had an emergency executive session meeting, got together, discussed the options of what we could do. You could have a little mini convention of just a central committee. You could have a statewide convention with about 700 delegates, or you could do a caucus. And we'd done a caucus in 2012, and it was a successful caucus, but it was long. And it was long because there were multiple rounds of voting. We were trying to get one winner take all. So we said, well, we can do a caucus, but we're not going to do the multiple rounds again. That was just painful. So there's a single round of voting. If no candidate gets over 50%, then the delegates will be apportioned between those getting at least 15% and less than 50. But if one candidate gets more than 50, they get all the delegates. So the actual process is going to take place on March 2nd. It starts at 11 Pacific, noon Mountain Time. And there are 210 locations across the state. And you will get a postcard here in a couple of weeks telling you exactly where and exactly when you go to a caucus. It will not be your conventional polling locations in most cases. There might be a couple of places where it is, but it'll probably be a high school gymnasium or some other venue that can hold a bunch of people. And you'll go there at 11. If you're in Coeur d'Alene, you go there at 11 o'clock, go in and check in. You have to bring your photo ID. You will sign a poll book, and the poll book will have your name on it because it's your precinct. And there are 1,675 poll books covering the 976 precincts that Idaho has. Some precincts have so many people that they need multiple poll books. There's no more than 500 names in any one poll book. And you'll sign that. You'll get a stamp on the back of your hand, and you go into the venue. Now, at some venues, large venues, the caucus captain has the option of starting the balloting early. There'll be an inspection of the ballot box, and the first guy to go there will sign an affidavit, and they'll seal the ballot box and put it in the affidavit. It'll basically say, I looked inside and there was nothing in there until I put this affidavit in. And then you'll be able to ballot and leave if you want, or you can stick around for the program. An hour after the doors open, there's going to be a program, invocation, Pledge of Allegiance, opening comments by the chairman, and then we'll see some campaign videos by the various candidates.
Okay, well, let me stop you there. So you're saying someone could show up when the doors open, cast their ballot, and leave?
Yeah, there is. We have that procedure in place so that if the caucus captains want to do that to the venue. So you got to understand, there are 210 caucus locations. The smallest one is Three Creek School down in Oahe. It serves 18 Republican voters in that precinct. The largest venue is in Meridian at the Capitol Church. It serves 20 precincts, and there are 18,012 Republican voters. So there's a huge, 1,000 to 1 ratio between the largest and the smallest. So the rules are set up so that they're general guidelines, but the caucus captain, the guy who's in charge of that particular location, has the latitude to adapt the rules for their particular location. Because it's not, Idaho isn't a one-size-fits-all state. And we needed to have rules so that there were certain things that were common at all locations. The photo ID, checking in, signing the poll book, The ballots are all the same. The procedures for tabulating are all the same. But they had to be adaptable because, some places you're going to have thousands of people. Other places you might have 3 or 4 guys and you know all their names.
And if you show up at one of these venues that has 18,000 people in it, it's not just a one single file line and you got to wait.
Oh, no. There will probably be 20 or 30 different lines, one for each precinct, and in each precinct maybe split up alphabetically, like A to N, M, or A to M, M through R, S,
Okay.
whatever. Okay. So no line will have a poll book that will serve more than 500 voters. And we're, by the rules, we have to have a facility that will accommodate 10%. Okay. Normal turnout is anywhere from 15 to 30%. And so it'll be a mix between how you vote normally. You go to the polling place, you walk in, you show your ID, you sign it, you go, you vote, and you leave. Okay. Or if you want to stick around and watch the program, you can do that too. Or if you want to stick around at the end and watch the tabulation, once everybody that arrives there between the doors opening and 90 minutes later, if you're in line, you're going to get to vote. You're going to get to go through and vote. You may not make or miss the program, but you'll be able to cast your ballot for the candidate and the delegate for the candidate that you want. And that balloting will stay open until everybody who wants to vote has voted. As soon as the last person has voted, the balloting will close, and then they'll proceed to tabulation. And with the tabulation, they'll take the ballot box right then and there, dump it out on a table. There'll be at least 2 tabulators that'll be selected, and early on in the program, they will be confirmed by the body. In other words, they'll say, the caucus chairman or caucus captain will say, okay, I've got Jim Smith and Julie Reed here, and they're going to be the tabulators. Does anybody have an objection? And nobody objects, then those guys will be your tabulators. And they don't have to be precinct committeemen, or all they have to be is members of the party that are there to vote. And
this
so
happens in full view of everyone.
Everybody. And witnesses from the campaign if they want. And so they'll come out, the ballots will come out, dump it on a table. The first thing that'll happen is they'll get sorted into piles. One of the tabulators will pick up the pile. They'll say, aha, this is a vote for Nikki Haley. She'll pass it to the other guy. The other guy will look at, yes, Nikki Haley, and they'll put it in the Nikki Haley pile. Next one might be Trump. Yeah, Trump. Okay, put it in the Trump pile. And they'll go through and sort all the ballots. And then they'll count each stack and write down the number of the count. And then they'll go back and they'll count it again. And that number has to match perfectly. If it doesn't, they do it a 3rd time or a 4th time until they get 2 consecutive counts that are identical. Once that's done, they'll enter those tabulated results on the tabulation sheet. And both the tabulators and the caucus captain will sign that sheet. Caucus captain will announce to whoever's there out loud what the vote totals are, and then he'll call those in to state party headquarters. Now there'll be 2 tabulation sheets, 2 identical sheets. The second one goes to the caucus coordinator, who's overseeing all the caucus locations in that legislative district or in the county. And that guy will also call in the results. So you've got 2 independent people calling the state party headquarters with the results, so that we're sure to get all the results in, and we're sure we got matches. If there's any discrepancies, we'll have the phone numbers and emails of both those guys. We'll be able to call them and say, hey, what's going on here? How come these numbers don't match? So that later that afternoon, early evening, we should be able to announce the results. And then all the ballots cast, the ones that were marked, the ones that weren't marked, the ones that were spoiled. If you mark your ballot, oh, I made a mistake. You can go back to the ballot master, hand them your ballot, and say, I'd like a fresh one, please. And that they'll give you an exchange ballot, and they'll void the old one. So all those ballots and the poll books will all go get shipped securely with tracking numbers back to state party headquarters, and they'll canvass them there. So the whole we always say paper ballots, hand counting, hand tabulation, witnessed on the spot. That's the only way to do it fair, and that's exactly the way we're doing it.
And that's perfect, because that's where I want to ask you this question, because professionally speaking here, you are a man that relies heavily and creates computers. You create technology that helps the efficiency of many different products in many different areas in engineering and such. And so here's a guy who trusts computers, knows how they work, but you are saying right here we are relying on would you say that this is the most secure, efficient way to do this?
Yeah, I wouldn't say efficiency.
Fair enough.
Right.
Fair
what
enough.
I want is accuracy, and I want it open and transparent and accurate. And I want as many eyes on it every step of the process as possible. When the ballots are printed, they're sealed in 100 ballot packs. They have anti-counterfeiting measures on them, so nobody even knows what they look like yet. Each caucus location will receive a box with all the caucus supplies. The ballot will be in there. That box will be securely shipped and tracked. Know exactly where it is and who receives it, who signed for it. So we've got end-to-end tracking of all this stuff so that we know exactly what's going on.
Excellent. All right. Well, Brent, thank you so much for coming on and explaining this. This has been much needed info right at the right time, and we'll be able to share this segment around as well to keep that alive.
Well, you're very welcome, Matt. And if you have any questions, go to IdahoRepublicanCaucus.com. IdahoRepublicanCaucus.com, and there's all the information there. There's a training manual. You can download the caucus handbook of what the people who are running the caucus use for running the caucus. You can look up your location, time, place, everything. All the information's there. IdahoRepublicanCaucus.com.
Excellent. Thank you for that. And we just had flashed on the screen there how people can follow you on X too, because that's quite entertaining as well.
Great. Thanks, Matt. It's been fun. I appreciate
All right.
the time.
Excellent. All right, we'll see you next time. Thank you. All right, folks, you heard it here. They've got a system out, and and he correctly corrected me by saying it may not be the most efficient way, but it is definitely the most transparent and the most secure way for everybody to kind of see exactly what's going on here. So that's fantastic. All right, we are going to take a quick break, and we will be back in just a minute.
There's a saying in Idaho. Esto perpetua. It is forever. But the truth is, nothing lasts forever. Not without a fight. The Gem State is ours to fight for. It is ours to win. For life and liberty. For honesty and integrity. We ride together.
All right, folks, welcome back. So the Senate was moving along this morning as well while we came on the air, but they have since adjourned. The House is adjourned, the Senate is adjourned, and anytime something like that happens, you think, well, maybe they're all headed off to a caucus meeting or trying to figure out some other things. There are definitely some things that they're trying to manage. Last week we hammered pretty hard the maintenance budget bills that are still. Maybe we should start a ticker on how long it's been since those bills passed committee, because they should be ready to go out onto the Senate or the House floors to be debated. So we'll work on a ticker. That'll be fun. Where are the maintenance bills? In the meantime, though, Brian Allman joins us. He is down at the Capitol. He has been in the House this morning. He's been hanging around there. Brian, how are you? What's going on over there? Looks like everybody adjourned, huh?
Yeah, the House session this morning was a lot quicker than we figured. There were 5 bills on the third reading calendar, and one of those is the K-12 concealed carry bill. And they just zipped through a couple of them and then delayed the rest until tomorrow. So it sounds like I don't know. I don't want to make too many assumptions, but maybe they're trying to alter it. Maybe they're trying to kill it. Maybe they're trying to tweak a few things. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess we'll see. And then on the Senate side, there was a couple of interesting bills that they were going to talk about today. There was a driver's license bill. There was something about hunting license and that sort of thing. But they went through their gubernatorial appointments, and it looks like that they've adjourned, at least for now. Maybe they'll come back later today, but they might have adjourned till tomorrow. But this morning in House State Affairs was pretty interesting. We had 2 bills that were presented. One was a Senate joint a House joint resolution that would put forward the repeal of the Blaine Amendment, put that before the voters. And Elaine Price presented that today. We have a short clip of her presenting that. Let's roll that, and then we'll come back. So let's see that clip.
Committee. For the record, my name is Elaine Price, District 4, Coeur d'Alene. I bring before you House Joint Resolution 1. This resolution, if passed, would put a question before the voters asking if they would like to repeal Article 9, Section 5 of Idaho Constitution. So this amendment is named after Congressman James Blaine. And he tried to add this amendment to our U.S. Constitution, and it failed. Blaine had a hatred for Catholic Irish immigrants and expressed his bigotry in this amendment. This was during a time when they were expanding the public schools. And in our case, I believe this may be true, that we were trying to become states. States were trying to become states. So they had to petition Congress, and James Blaine had a lot of influence in Congress. So they added this amendment to their Constitution to be able to gain statehood. Blaine wanted the public to deny funds to these Catholic Irish immigrants, and this solidified his discrimination towards them. This amendment is rooted in bigotry and discrimination. This has been turned into a separation of church and state. Idaho addresses the real form of separation in church and state in its state constitution. This resolution is just trying to get this discriminatory language out of our Constitution. I've heard the argument that each Blaine amendment is different.
Great. We don't have to wait. She goes on for a few more minutes explaining the bill, but that's the crux of the issue here, is that this Blaine amendment and how they were brought forward across many states, especially during the Western expansion, where states were trying to get admitted to the Union because he had much influence in Congress. Brian, what's your take on this? Because I think when it does come to the church and state arguments and where this amendment is, we've heard Raul Labrador put out a statement that this is dead law, so to speak. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but that's essentially what's being argued out there. What is your take on all this?
So the House Joint Resolution that Representative Price has presented wouldn't actually change anything yet. What it would do is put a issue on the ballot for voters to decide, because when we amend our Constitution, it has to go before the voters, and this would be a constitutional amendment because it's repealing part of the Constitution. Article 9, Section 5 of the Idaho State Constitution says that no money for educational purposes can be given to sectarian uses, private schools and such that are explicitly religious. Somebody in the anti-resolution testimony camp pointed out that what the court ruling says that is, if you send any money to any private religion or private institution, you can't discriminate. You can't say that, well, we'll send it to this secular institution, but you can't send it to a private religious school. And that's the real debate going on with tax credits and vouchers and ESAs and things. And that's why a lot of the schools are against this, the school organizations, school board associations, the teachers unions, because of course, this is all about maintaining their control of the public schools and keeping as many children in that system as possible. I didn't catch his name, but there was a pastor from Middleton who testified in favor of the bill. And he pointed out that, when you talk about religious instruction, many of these public schools, they are already promoting what is essentially a religion of diversity, equity, inclusion, religion of Marxism, a religion of tolerance, anti-racism, these words that they come up with to name these things. It's not an explicitly religious worldview, but it is a worldview. It's a way of evaluating good and evil and the meaning of things. So what they're really doing, and Ryan Spoon pointed this out during my live tweet, is that they're trying to codify that only they are allowed to present a worldview to public school children.
Right. Yeah, Brian, we actually clipped that pastor's comments, and we do want to play that. So let's take a quick break. We'll come back, we'll play that clip, and then we'll continue this conversation because this is really great. Can you stick around?
Sure.
All right, excellent. All right, we'll be right back.
All Idaho lawmakers swear an oath to support the Idaho and U.S. constitutions. But how's that working out for you? because not all Idaho lawmakers share the same values. That's where the Citizens Alliance of Idaho Pledge comes in. 10 statements inspired by those 2 founding documents that are designed to preserve our shared values. Values such as education freedom, safeguarding free speech, defending our protected right to self-defense, and being responsible stewards of taxpayer dollars. When a lawmaker signs the pledge, they are performing an act of political courage, accepting the challenge to be a champion for our values, and serving with political integrity. To find out if your lawmaker signed the pledge, visit idahopledge.com. Paid for by Citizens Alliance of Idaho. We ride together.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Danny Steinmeier. I'm the pastor of Truth Family Bible Church in Middleton, Idaho, and I stand in favor of this joint resolution. The main part of my testimony today is just to acknowledge that there are more things at stake than simply just education. Our church does face tangential issues related to this. However, my main testimony is related to what I believe is really important here, and that is the myth of neutrality. The Idaho state constitution begins with a preamble, as you are all familiar with, and the preamble identifies that we are giving thanks to Almighty God for the freedoms that we have, and then the laws that come from that are recognizing that God has given us a freedom and an individual freedom in order to organize and to create a state and to have laws. Those laws are under God, and the Constitution acknowledges God. I do find it interesting that a religious people in the state can be taxed by a government that identifies an acknowledgement of God and then says anyone who has a religious affiliation organization cannot benefit from that taxation. And so that's the basis for what I wanted to identify today. We are a people that are under God. Our Pledge of Allegiance identifies such as well. And so we are a religious people. There is actually no such thing as an irreligious people. And so when we're talking about appropriation of funding to supposed neutral or non-religious parties, I want to suggest to you that that is a myth. We are always supporting people with religious convictions. This world is filled with a religious affiliation one way or another. There is, of course, competing religions, but the reality of religious organizations cannot be denied, and so they should not be discriminated against solely on the basis of being a religious organization. So thank you.
Yeah, very good. He then got a question and answered it just as eloquently after that as well. But this really just comes down to the foundational aspects of our country and what we escaped, England and the Church of England and Europe and all the folks that came over here to establish freedom to exercise their religion, not necessarily to say that religion should have no part in our society, that should just be kept in the home or in the churches and not permeate throughout our society, because we are a religious people, and I think he so eloquently said it there. Brian, what do you think is going to be the biggest hurdle in folks voting for this if it makes its way to the ballot in November?
Well, you're going to see people come out and try and portray it as the government establishing a religion. Like you were saying, we created this country to freely exercise a religion, and what is often called the separation of church and state, which the words are obviously not found in the Constitution. What the Constitution says is that you shall not make an establishment of religion. And that context is lost on us today because, we haven't had an established church in America, whereas in England, where we came from, they had an established church. You paid tithes to the church as part of your taxes, and they could enforce morality and enforce very specific, religious ideals on their society. And that's really what they were escaping. Obviously, this amendment, making it able for parents to take their children's tax money and instead of taking it to the public school, take it to a private religious organization, that's not going to do that. It's not going to establish a specific denominational church over all of Idahoans. It's just going to allow parents and families to use money the way they see fit. If a Catholic family wants to go to a Catholic school and we have a scheme in place for an education savings account or a tax credit, then they should be able to use it there. If a Muslim family wants to go to a Muslim school, that would be just as fine. It's not establishing a religion, but that's how they're going to portray it if it does make it to the ballot. They're going to say that this is just a bunch of people who hate public schools and they're a bunch of Christian extremists. Maybe they'll even call us Christian nationalists and say that we're trying to get the government to pay for hardcore right-wing extremist Christian schooling, which is not what it's about at all. So the countering that is just trying to explain that no, this is removing a relic of religious bigotry. This is removing this amendment that was put in place to keep Catholic children from going to Catholic schools. And as the pastor said, and when he answered his question after that clip, that amendment has now been weaponized by people who, hate Christianity.
Right, exactly right. And I recently listened to the arguments, the Supreme Court arguments on the Espinoza versus Montana case, which is what which is the most recent case that a lot of these legislators are referring to when they look at the Blaine Amendment, because it was referred to in that case. And there's a little secret about me that I do love listening to old Supreme Court arguments, because they're all captured on audio, so you can listen to their actual debates that are going on in the Supreme Court, and it's fascinating. And when that ruling came out, it was a 5-4 ruling at the time, the things that were being made clear was, if the state is going to offer a benefit to families to use for educational purposes, that the state cannot deny a family the ability to use it because they want to use it for a religious purpose, for a religious school. And so if the government is going to give out a benefit, they cannot discriminate based on religion. And it was fascinating to hear the arguments being made for that from a different angle, from the more liberal side of the court than it was coming from the conservative side of the court. But also just in our own schooling, when we went to our secular schools, we were learned that equality is, uber alles, that's the thing, right? Equality. And you should be treating everybody equally, regardless of their gender, their faith, their sex, whatever it is, and religion. So I think, I don't know. I'm thinking that if this makes it to the ballot, there's going to be a lot of hard work getting over that church versus state argument. But I think when you talk about the equality and that this is removing some sort of bigotry, I think you've hit it there. So, any last thoughts on this before I want to get your thoughts on something else, but any last words here?
Well, I was just going to say the real opposition to this from the education establishment is because they're worried that this would lay the groundwork for a school choice money following the student, and I think that's really why they're opposed to it, and that's where they're going to attack.
Yeah, absolutely. When it comes down to the money, that's exactly it. Okay, well, this morning in the House State Affairs, the other bill that came up was this online pornography protection bill that will put the onus on the actual providers of this objectionable content to verify the age of people accessing their materials. So I want to play. Elaine presented that this morning. I want to play that clip. So let's listen to that real quick.
Mr. Chair and Committee, I bring before you RS 31118, the Online Child Safety Act, and for the record, my name is Elaine Price, District 4, Coeur d'Alene. This legislation provides a cause of action for any person exposed to material harmful to a minor in violation of 482103, which is page 4, lines 3 through 35. These commercial entities that knowingly and intentionally publish this material shall be liable if they fail to perform reasonable age verification to verify the age of the individual. And the commercial entities is defined on page 2, line 24. The material harmful to a minor must be substantial, or 1/3 of the content that they provide. The solution we're offering falls to the content creator, leaving the third-party verification options up to these providers, and we're not mandating it by the state. We have a constitutional duty, Article 3, Section 24, to protect virtue and sobriety and promote temperance and morality.
She goes on to give the reasons why here that they're bringing this forward. But that's essentially what the bill does. It's going to put the onus on the provider to verify the age of the consumer of their product. So, Brian, we know that they're trying to tackle this. The legislature is trying to tackle this from various different angles. What's your take on this this new idea here?
Well, it's an interesting idea. Obviously, over on the Senate side, Senator Kevin Cook has his bill that he brought back from last year to penalize device manufacturers if they don't turn on a porn filter by default for phones sold to minors. Now, Representative Price has this bill that would go after the providers of material that's harmful to minors. I'm, still waiting for the printing for the bill to be printed to answer some questions about it. How does it mandate that providers verify your age? Is it just click a button and you say, yes, I'm 18? We all know how well that works. Or do they have to submit an ID or a credit card, which I know in some other states they've done that. I think Utah did that. And, some of the big porn companies actually just stopped serving that state because they didn't want to actually have to enforce age verification, which, on the one hand, I think that's a great idea. Anything that keeps porn away from our children is fantastic. And if that means all the porn companies go out of business, then awesome. However, from a privacy standpoint, it is a little bit worrying that you have these websites that would be required to be taking your ID or taking a credit card in order for you to use it. I don't know. Like I said, I want to see the bill text to see exactly how it plays out. I almost lean on the side of, we need to keep this away from our children. Representative Price cited a statistic in her testimony that 73% of minors, I think it was like 14-year-olds, had, seen some form of pornography on the internet. It's just so pervasive, and I'm open to suggestions of how to stop it because it is, it's almost ubiquitous now.
Yeah, it really is. It's incredible what our kids are able to access these days and how easily they're able to access it. And even if you're just worried about them watching, violent videos on how to beat up your sister. I mean, it's like even that stuff is like hard to get away from. And there was a huge controversy back when I was young that we shouldn't be watching Looney Tunes cartoons because it was so violent. Because Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyote were so violent. So this kind of stuff has been around. We tried to fix it, but we've reached a new level with the pornography and the explicit materials and the pervasiveness of it, because people really out there preying on our children, and like you said, I appreciate everybody trying to come up with these solutions, and hopefully we can get we can make it to that point. All right, one last question for you, because you've been so generous staying on here with us. One last question: the fentanyl bill passed the House yesterday. It's on its way to the Senate, and it'll be assigned to a committee. I don't know if that's actually happened yet. Maybe you can tell us. But what's your prediction when it makes it to the Senate?
Well, I think it's back in the House committee. Representative Cannon tried to amend it during the print hearing. And then in the House hearing, Representative Heather Scott tried to send it to the amending order, and nobody was having it. So it's on its way to the Senate. I've heard some suggestion that maybe some people in the Senate might try to amend it as well. It's obviously got to go through its committee hearing where we'll get public testimony. All the police and sheriffs will show up again and talk about how important this bill is. And it is important. We need to do something. But there are some little issues with the wording that I think might need to be tweaked. And we'll see if they're able to do something at the committee level or if it goes to the Senate amending order. So there's still several more road stops before it gets to the governor's desk. But so far, the sponsors of the bill have been seemingly unwilling to hear anything about changing any words. So.
Yeah, talk about not wanting to negotiate when there's such a hot button issue here. I mean, we've seen other bills be pulled back into committee to get revamped, and we haven't heard from them. We haven't heard squat about them yet, but we hope so. All right, Brian. Well, thanks for we'll let you get back at it down there. Thanks for coming to us live from the Capitol. And where can people find you and keep in touch with you?
Well, I am most active on Twitter, at Gem State Brian, but of course go to gemstatechronicle.com where I post stories, guest editorials. I've got the ticker going you see up there with that I've just updated with the latest news. And yeah, I'll keep updating it as things happen, and things are happening fast.
Fantastic. All right, Brian, thanks again. We'll check back with you.
Thanks, Matt.
All right, folks. Well, that's what's going on around the Capitol. I do want to update you real quick on what was supposed to happen in the Senate today. Again, they were confirming some gubernatorial candidates, appointments from the governor. But there was supposed to be a debate on the Senate Bill 1216, which would have made it mandatory that if a driver's license was handed incorrectly to somebody, that the Department of Transportation would confiscate that driver's license and cancel it. I guess right now it's kind of optional whether or not, if they mistakenly give a driver's license to somebody, that they do anything about it. So this would solidify that. It seems like an obvious common sense one. So it's always interesting to listen to the debate on these types of issues because you learn some things, and then you're also surprised by some people's debates, and you can learn a lot. The other was a Senate Joint Resolution number 104, which would have looks like it was going to limit the length of a special session that was called by the legislature. Or the governor. I guess right now there's really no limit on how long the legislature can convene if there is a special session. And then they were going to do some amendments to a couple of other bills that apparently needed some amending and some negotiating. So we will keep track of that. And other than that, it's been a short day in the Senate and the House. So we will take a break and we'll reconvene right after this.
There's a saying in Idaho, Esto perpetua. It is forever. But the truth is, nothing lasts forever. Not without a fight. The Gem State is ours to fight for. It is ours to win. For life and liberty, for honesty and integrity. We ride together.
All right, folks, welcome back. We have an interview that a member of our team went out and did with Austin Peterson, and that is our producer Ben here got together with Austin to talk about election integrity, and so we wanted to share that with you now. This is an exclusive for Idaho Signal. I mean, it's not exclusive. I mean, Austin Peterson has his own show, but this is an exclusive sit down with Idaho Signal. So let's roll that.
A very volatile and important election year, and one question that always comes up is the issue of election integrity. Do you have any thoughts on it coming into a presidential election that many are calling the most important in history?
Brother, if I had the solutions to those problems, or the answers to those questions, I would be the most highly paid consultant in the United States. I would be like, Steve Bannon would have nothing on me, brother. I would be like, they'd put me right next to the king. I'll say this in regards to election integrity. There's a fascinating phenomenon that you will find about election integrity. I don't know if you know your Secretary of State. I know my Secretary of State. He's Jay Ashcroft. And when I've interviewed him several times, and whenever I ask him about election integrity, he says, you're right. It's a big issue. It's a big problem. It's something we've got to get a handle on. We've got to get our elections secure. Now, he'll say that when I ask him about election integrity in general. But when I say, now, Mr. Attorney General, tell me about election integrity here in the state of Missouri. Are our elections in the state of Missouri secure? Oh, yeah, they're totally secure. Yeah, absolutely. Because, of course, he's in charge of them. He's not going to say. I'll bet you that if you polled all 50 attorney generals in this country and asked them how safe and what's the integrity of the elections in the state of Arizona or Missouri or Idaho, they'd probably all say, probably 100% of those polled would say, all elections are entirely secure, right? And it's a challenge because we have federal voting rights acts and things, that there are certain rules and regulations that come down from the federal government. All 50 states have separate rules, and that we want that. We don't want to have the federal government dictating to each state how they manage and control their elections, right? The beauty of the federalist system is to have all 50 states managing their own. So if you're really concerned about something like election integrity, the real uphill battle is going to be in your own state. And to ask yourself, do you trust your own attorney general, right? Is the attorney general of Idaho on the up and up, right? Or not attorney general, yeah, secretary of state, excuse me. Well, attorney general is important too, but is your secretary of state, on the up and up? And if you think they're not, you're going to have to work to get yourself a good secretary of state who will manage your elections effectively. And then, of course, I know a lot of people who are concerned about election integrity, but they don't show up to manage the polls, right? The only people I see to show up to run the polls are okay boomers and geriatrics to the max. If you want to see what election integrity is really about, you need to be involved in your local voting. You need to volunteer for your local polling locations.
Austin on that particular topic there. You got to get involved, folks. We got to get involved. And as you saw, there's plenty of opportunity to get involved, especially with the first event coming up, the March 2nd caucus that we had Mr. Brent Reagan on earlier today talking about. You really need to get involved. And I know if you're watching this show, and if maybe if somebody shared this show, you're watching it for the first time, we are all about action. We're all about getting out there and making sure you are involved in any sense of the word. I can't believe how many folks we've had on the show that have been able to tell you how to get involved with simply door knocking. We had Dalton Traylor on yesterday talking about door knocking. Go volunteer to be a poll worker. Go volunteer at your local central committee. We had a central committeeman on a couple of weeks ago talking about how to get involved in your local community. And of course, just run. I mean, the folks that we've had on this program who are sitting in the legislature right now, they were citizens just like you and me. And a lot of them are not career politicians. You can't really be a career politician if you're in the state legislature because you're only there for 3 months and you get paid very little for that time to make a living off of it for the rest of the year. So everybody there is citizen legislators, and that's what we need. And you need to get involved. And if you don't want to run for something, then get behind somebody. If you've got a lot of money and you want to donate, then donate. So it's really important to keep paying attention to that stuff. So anyway, we this morning, I wanted to let you know, this morning during that Blaine Amendment hearing, attorney Kate Hartley, who's been on the program a couple of times, and she was on specifically about that bill, and she had told us she was headed down there to testify. Well, once again, in the House State Affairs, the connection there provided by public television went south on us a few times. And so Kate Hartley's testimony was not recorded or broadcast. Maybe they archived it another way and it'll show up in the database later. But if you were watching live, you did not get to see Kate Hartley's testimony. We had invited her to come on the program today, but she's in meetings. She's got out of that hearing and is quickly taking meetings and doing what she needs to do. So she's going to be back this week. We'll have her back. We'll hear what she testified about, and then we will know exactly her take on it, because she's a fantastic First Amendment lawyer, especially when it comes to religious freedom in this country. So, all right, folks, I think we are going to call it quits today. We've gone through our clips. The House and the Senate decided to call it quits, at least in front of the live cameras. So I thank you for joining us. If you do want to support Idaho Signal, and we've been getting some support, it's really fantastic. Please head over to idahosignal.com. There you can contact us. You can offer some financial support and keep us help keep us on the air. I appreciate everything. All the commenters and all the folks out there, if you're watching on X or on Telegram, Rumble, YouTube, Facebook, I really do appreciate all of the support and all the great comments and feedback that we've been getting. We can't stress that enough. We also, it's interesting. We had a great caller when we did our call-in. We did our call-in trial a few days ago last week, and we had a great caller come in. So I think we're going to try that again. So if you want an opportunity to tune in, and to voice your opinion, we'll have that coming to you maybe later this week. So thank you again for watching, and stay tuned. And always remember, if you need a tagline, you got to come up with it before you try to deliver it. We'll see you next time. Take care.
This bill, I think, it puts a stake in the ground that says we have a sovereign right to protect what's ours.